Hi, and welcome to my journey. So today we're headed down there to find out if we're going to get the orientation to volunteer at the state fair. Okay. We're going to take our time getting down there. So we gave ourselves plenty of time to get there. This is my first time leaving the dogs alone at the house. I left them alone in the house like when I was out doing yard work and stuff like that, but this is my first time just leaving them alone. I got Gracie in her cage, and Snoopy, of course, she knows how to act. I'm not home, so yeah. So yeah, we're on our way. Flipping cars right there. I keep thinking I need me a car. And I keep thinking I need to get rid of the Infinity. I really need to see what's wrong with it first. Right? Because I don't know. The way it was smoking, it was like somebody put a smoke bomb in the tailpipe of my car. I couldn't explain why all of a sudden, it just smoked the way that it did. And people couldn't see nothing behind me. So, I don't know. We'll have to see, what's going on there before I decide to actually get rid of it. Because it definitely won't pass inspection that way. I didn't think I was going to have any problems with it. I hadn't had any problems except for the oil leak. So needless to say, I would like to have me another car. I mean, I like this one because I can go places. I don't have to stop and get gas, I just can't go very far. And of course, I thought about, would I want me like a Tesla or something like that, which could go maybe 200 miles, 300 miles. I'm not even sure. But, it's really an inconvenience, to have to wait for the charge to charge back up, even at a fast charge station, right? So, a fast charge station at your house could still take up to an hour or two, just to charge your car. Last night, treated myself to some chocolate chip mint ice cream. It was pretty good. Yes. But I've still been doing my lightweight exercises. I've been feeling a little bit guilty because, when I like to eat, I also let the dogs eat too, right? And so Gracie, she was starting to look like she might get overweight if I keep feeding her the way that I've been feeding her. So I took her out for an exercise last night, and it did wonders as far as, releasing some of her energy. I didn't really have to worry about that, with Snoopy, because Snoopy's old like me. We just need to stay active to keep our circulation and, our momentum going. But a puppy, yeah, she's gonna need, she gonna need to run once a day, at least. And so I'm looking forward to, her getting me more active, and taking her out, to get her exercise. Because like I said, if you've watched any of my videos of recent, Snoopy, she's been really slowing down a lot. We went from, only just walking, to, 200, 300, 400, 300 feet, and then, having to turn back around, which, I understand, and it had me really worried that, I was losing her. But, Gracie has came into our lives, and she kind of gave us some of her energy, and us old ladies, we feel like we just relishing in her energy, and she got a lot of it. She loves to play tug of war. Oh my gosh, she loves to play tug of war. I'm gonna have to film her while she's playing tug of war and send it to my daughter, because she wants some pictures. So I've been watching van life because I was truly concerned, about the safety of van lifers, right? And I feel like, van lifers, who are on YouTube, serves two purposes. It serves them a means of making money, and it also provides an additional layer of safety, because when people don't hear from them or see them, they'll, probably comment, like on their community page and ask, are you all right? Are you okay? Because, we're worried about, mainly our women who are out here living in their vehicles and living in such a hobo state, right? They're not bums because, they're mobile. They're hobos. But that transient lifestyle, you would hope that, they, keep somebody informed, as to, what's going on in their life, so that, if they do come up missing, that there could be an alert put out and a missing person, check can go out also if necessary, because we have a lot of people who are still being homeless every day, whether it's an eviction or they can't afford their homes anymore. And I feel them, and the anxiety and the depression, and and a lot of them, they will film, them vacating out of their home and, moving into a van with the hopes that, they'll gain support, from people on the internet, where, they could not have gotten support any other place, because, our welfare system, they will only feed you if you don't have kids. And they'll feed you maybe like 3 months, unless you're a senior over the age of 62. Then they'll feed you based off of your income. That's a new thing that they had just implemented, that they will feed seniors of poverty level with food stamps. And my whole thing is that the government knows that people are out here suffering, okay? And they know, the influx of people, being vacated out of their homes. They know this. This is not something, they can't just say, oh, well, we didn't know. No, they know. They know this, right? So one of the things that I was thinking about, today was, they should have had some type of stimulus, go out in July or August. That would have helped a lot of people, right? And they didn't. Now, there was something that came on my feed that said that Trump is considering, another stimulus. And I'm like, now you're considering a stimulus? Right? It's like they only consider a stimulus when their businesses start losing money, when people stop buying stuff, when people stop going to restaurants, when people stop, because they don't have the money to buy anything. And they're like, oh, well, let's give them some money so they can buy. And, only then they decide, that that's the time to help. Instead of, making it a situation of real charity. They only think it's real charity when their profit margins start to dwindle. But let's face it, the stimulus comes from taxpayers' money. It's not coming out of the wealthy's pocket. It's not. And what had happened with people rebelling against the removal of the immigrants is, you remember when I posted on my Facebook page that, the farmers had decided, well, they're not going to make any money off of their crops because they can't have the slave labor of the immigrants, right? See, the immigrants, they don't have to pay taxes on the immigrants' wages, and they get to underpay the wages for the immigrants. That's the whole reason why, they want the immigrants. It goes back to capitalism, and the capitalism is that, they need that slave labor because farming, really isn't a profitable business unless, they can get the labor done for little or nothing. Otherwise, their whole crops will go to waste. And so what the farmers had did was they had destroyed their crops, and decided, that they would get more money through insurance claims. Now, for them to have posted this on the internet, I thought, would, cause, insurance adjusters to determine whether or not, that they were legitimate claims. But it just sort of shrunk out of the it disappeared off of my algorithm as far as there was no follow-up. Now, America is the biggest provider of food in the world. And of course, my thought is, how are we the biggest provider of food and yet, we can't afford fresh food? Well, behind the scenes, our government officials, they're not trading with these other countries for alliances with money, right? Well, they're trading food to get their money and to get their alliance, right? Because you have countries out there that, their ecology will not allow them to harvest year round. They can only harvest, a limited amount of food year round, because of their climate, right? So that's why a lot of these countries out here, they just don't have all of the climates like America has. America has all of the climates. So behind our backs, our leaders are, using food, as bargaining tools to create alliances and to also create behind the scene money deals, right? Saudi Arabia, they have all of the money that they need, but they don't have the food. You see, and this is a similar situation with many countries, especially up in Europe, because their weather gets cold, and it's cold most of the time. You know, and sure, they could, try to do, hydroponic, indoor cropping of food, but it's very expensive. And they do. I'm sure they do. But it ain't going to be enough to feed all of their people. So they have to import food. And that's one of the things that the farmers had did was, decided to, get rid of the food. Now, it wasn't just American farmers, because the Asian farmers, they too decided, to get rid of some of their food, and that's basically because they didn't have the logistics to get the food to other foreign countries, right? So their problem was a little bit different from our problem. I was watching this guy who talks about, our economy mainly in the terms of property, but he was talking about food today. And I'm like, he doesn't usually talk about food. So he was stating that the food prices in the restaurants have also gone up really high. And basically saying that for two people to go out to an average medium, not a like a three-star restaurant or something like that, you're gonna go out for two people and easily spend like $50. And then he was stating also that the restaurant is tagging on tips, but these tips, they don't go towards the tips of the actual waiters. And I was like, what? That's diabolical, right? When people are giving these tips, these 20% tips, we're naturally thinking that it's going to go towards the waiters and, the wait people, the people who bring us the water, the people who make sure that we get our drinks and bring us our food and, cleans up the tables. But this is what the man was saying. The man was saying is that, these restaurants, they are not sharing the tips with the wait staff. Like I said, to me, that's just diabolical. So, and he said that because I guess, some of the waiters and the waitresses have informed them that, they want their tips. Can they get a tip? Because, the tip that comes up off of, the card or at the end of the meal, the restaurateur is keeping the money. that's something that has happened, it seems like, as a result of the fact that when Trump says, see, this is what business owners do to undermine, the benefits that, was given to the people. So if Trump says, okay, they're not gonna tax the taxes on tips, now the restaurant owners don't want to give the tips to the wait staff. Right? So you see how on one hand, Trump tries to do something that will help boost the economy. You have these shiesty, capitalist entrepreneurs or business owners who decide that this is a way that they can, benefit and steal, what should be given to, the poor workers. And this is, one of the things that I was trying to tell, my daughter, that capitalism is the beast. Capitalism are people who seize opportunity, irregardless of whether it's ethical. And most of the time, it is the business owner. It is the business owners that say, nah, they don't want unions. It is the business owners that want to be able to, fire you without cause. And some of them, they'll fire you, by sabotage. That's how crazy some of these business owners are. And yet, they want to be praised and, and walk around here, flaunting money, which creates situations where people will start targeting the rich. It's not going to be good. It's not.